All right. Welcome to our podcast. It's going to be an American history podcast where we read about the Civil War. Some of our guiding questions today are going to be, first of all, why did the Confederacy live on after the Civil War ended? And second of all, how are people still sympathetic towards the Confederacy today after slavery and all that? December 20th, 1860. South Carolina was the first state to secede from the Union, followed by Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas. Shortly after was Virginia, Arkansas, North Carolina, and Tennessee. Hence, the Confederate States of America, or the Confederacy, was born. September 1861. After lengthy consideration was given to various designs, General Joseph E. Johnston and Quartermaster General William L. Cabell met with General P.G.T. Beauregard at his headquarters in Virginia to finalize the design of the new battle flag. Johnston proposed a flag in the shape of an ellipse with a red field and a blue saltire, which is a diagonal cross, often called St. Andrew's Cross, containing a white star for each Confederate state. This flag, known as the Beauregard battle flag, would come to be recognized as the standard Confederate flag. Today, this flag bears several names, such as the Rebel flag, the Stars and the Bars, the Stainless Banner, and the Blood-Stained Banner.
There's no question as to why many after the Civil War revered and honored the Confederacy, and here's some examples of their fearsome nature and battle intellect during the war that leave no question as to why many proudly wear the battle flag.
By July 1861, when armies were learning how to properly conduct a battle, an incident at Rich Mountain, the first battle of the war, was recorded. Quote, atop the mountain, Union sharpshooters fired a volley at some rebels on the opposite slope, but failed to find their marks. One Confederate decided to insult the Yankees on the opposite hill by dropping his pantaloons and positioning his posterior side to the Yanks. One Yank, who had recovered his skills, answered with a center shot that left the ridiculing rebel dead in a rather demeaning position. Some might call that position doggy position. Downward dog, or I guess it's child's pose. Child's pose is what it's formally called. That's what it. Here, we have a video of the fearsome rebel yell, which is so famous in the Confederacy.
It's fearsome.
Yeah. Repeat the old rebel yell.
Now, we know you can't see this video because this is a podcast, but to describe it for you, it looks like they are gophers or prairie dogs. If you've ever seen a prairie dog yip, they raise their arms and puff out their stomachs just like that. So,
it's about 10 to 15 frail old men.
Old men.
Raising their arms and acting like prairie dogs.
There's no question why.
They say that each soldier had their own rebel yell.
Yeah. So
what's your rebel yell?
I like to give a yo, something like that. Apparently, it was fearsome back in the day, but there's no question as to why people look up to the Confederacy still. April 9th, 1865, the official end of the Civil War for Robert General E. Lee and the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia. While the fighting continued for several months, Lee's surrender at Appomattox serves as a symbolistic end of the Civil War. So, you might wonder, so why are we still talking about them? Because the Civil War ended. Well, after the Civil War, an influx of Confederate sympathizer groups, or Neo-confederate groups, began to be formed. Such as, in 1865, the First Ladies' Memorial Association was formed. In 1866, the famous Ku Klux Klan. In 1889, the United Confederate Veterans. 1894, the United Daughters of the Confederacy. In 1896, Sons of Confederate Veterans. So, there are a few of them. In the 1950s and 60s, big jump, the Old White Citizens Councils were formed to battle school desegregation in the South. 1985, you want to read that?
Yeah, 1985, I remember it like it was yesterday. The Council of Conservative Citizens, or the CCC, was formed, and it was I guess it is the modern reincarnation of the old white citizens' councils. From the mailing lists of its predecessor organization, the CCC has evolved into a crudely white supremacist group.
Here are some quotes from the CCC to understand a little bit about their ideals. God is the author of racism. God is the one who divided mankind into different types. Mixing the races is rebelliousness against God. So I should probably read these in Southern accent. Another one, quote, controlling immigration is about security of this republic. Terrorists illegally crossing the borders, and making sure countries like Mexico stop dumping their murderers, rapists, and those carrying AIDS and other communicable diseases and gang members on America's doorstep. So those are some Confederate quotes, modern Confederate, Neo-confederates. 1994, the leading group in Confederate advocacy, the League of the South, originally known as the Southern League, was formed. Stemmed from this group are some alt-right neo-Nazi groups such as the Proud Boys, the Nationalist Social Club, and the Base. Here's some quotes to understand the ideology of the League of the South. Quote, the League is my church. The League is my home. The League is my extended family. I will kill or die for the League. Want to read that one?
Yeah, somebody needs to say a good word for slavery. Where in the world are the Negroes better off today than in America?
Yikes.
Quote, that's a bad one.
The Southern League supports a return to political and social system based on kith and kin rather than impersonal, state wedded to the idea of universal rights of man. At its core is a European population.
Powerful Jews oppose the assertion of white identity while encouraging the expression of every other identity in order to weaken the whites.
So those are a few things to understand what these people think. Today, a 2011 opinion poll conducted for CNN found that 23% of people were still sympathetic to the Confederacy. I apologize, my dog is barking, so ignore that. In the same year,
the dog is a Neo-confederate.
Yeah, he's angry about this. In the same year, the Pew Research Center found even less support for those understanding that the Civil War was, quote, mainly about slavery. 38%, with a similar number of those polled, stating that it was appropriate for public officials to praise Confederate leaders. At the start of the 21st century, through magazines, websites, social media, in addition to books and radio shows, people can find a political platform and language which to articulate their pro-Confederate views. It is a language that decries activist judges who impose affirmative action quotas, oppose federal overreach, claims that third world immigration is causing Southern demographic displacement. It all came with an effort to reclaim the meaning of the Confederacy's most potent symbol, the Confederate battle flag, as a symbol of sacrifice, independence, and Southern heritage. In this way, the Confederate heritage movement has gone way beyond tending graves and cutting grass at Confederate cemeteries or reenacting battles.
Yeah, and even more recently, in 2015, the Sons of Confederate Veterans, or the SCV, appeared before the Supreme Court arguing for the right to put a Confederate flag on the vanity license plate, which is the customizable license plate you can get at the DMV in Texas. A Politico article from before the ruling noted that if the Supreme Court rules in favor of the SCV, then Texas would become the 10th state to allow the Confederate flag on its license plates. This will add to the political legitimation of the Confederacy that ranges from the SCV's involvement with the ROTC and UDC's SCV 8th annual awards given at the U.S. Service Academies to the U.S. President, annually sending a wreath for placement at the Confederate Memorial in Arlington.
Apologize for those long quotes, but it helps you understand what these Confederate groups kind of are looking for. The Supreme Court today, this was in 2014, Supreme Court ruled that 5-4 that the state of Texas could deny a license plate with Confederate flag without violating the First Amendment. Today, 9 states still allow these flags on license plates. So, today, the Texas has 178 Confederate monuments. Only Virginia has more, with 223, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center. There are also more than 240 schools across the U.S. that currently bear the name of a Confederate leader. There have been many debates and controversies over whether to remove these monuments or change the name of these schools. one of the biggest arguments to justify defending the Confederacy is the lost cause theory. The lost cause theory of the Confederacy refers to a collection of political and historical myths that form the bedrock of many notable Neo-Confederate slogans like "Heritage, not hate," and "States' rights" have shared roots in the post-Reconstruction effort to revise the indisputable fact of why the South seceded from the Union in the 1860s: slavery.
Yeah, so there are many debates over whether this theory should be taught in U.S. history classes, and what a student is taught in their education on the Civil War today depends on their location, as southern states are calling the Civil War the War of Northern Aggression, believe it or not. So other debates over handling the Confederacy in schools include those over whether students can wear the battle flag. The basis of this argument is that other pride flags are allowed in many schools, and this would mean that the battle flag represents Southern pride.
While the battle flag represents the continuity of white supremacy, neo-Nazis, and pro-slavery sentiments, the LGBT plus pride flag, as well as religious flags and symbols, do not. So, this has gone a little over 5 to 7 minutes, but if you made it this far, we appreciate it because we had a lot to talk about. And we hope this podcast disheartened you about the continuity and sympathy for Confederate ideologies because, what the heck, as I would say. So anyways, we hope you enjoy this outro.
Boys, try 'em.